So we're diving back into the Bhagavad Gita, and man, this thing is really making us work for our wisdom. We're trying to untangle this whole idea of finding solutions to suffering, which, let's be honest, is something we could all use a little help with, right?
Absolutely. And it's not always a straightforward path.
It's definitely more complicated than just, here's the problem, there's the solution, like some self-help guru might have you believe. We've already seen Arjuna practically begging to quit this whole war thing because he's so overwhelmed by attachments, remember?
Right. And that's actually a great example of how the Gita operates. It's not about quick fixes.
Oh, so you're saying there's more to it than just getting an answer.
It's more like, when you have surgery, you don't just show up expecting a miracle cure.
You mean there's prep work involved?
Exactly. You have to go through pre-op, follow all these instructions, get your body ready. The Gita's kind of like that. It talks about these prerequisites, these essential steps you need to take before the real work can begin.
Okay, so it's like prepping our souls for surgery. But instead of scalpels and anesthesia, we're talking about, what, introspection and self-awareness.
Something like that. And what's really cool is that the Gita uses these really down-to-earth examples to explain these steps.
Down to earth, like what? Give me an example.
Well, there's this one about an old man who's slowly losing his eyesight.
Wait, an old man losing his eyesight? How does that relate to, a battlefield in ancient India?
Okay, so bear with me here. It gets pretty insightful. This man, right, he might not even realize his vision is fading at first. Or maybe he just brushes it off.
Like, oh, it's just because I'm getting older, it happens.
Exactly. Thinks he has no control over it. But the thing is,
It's only a matter of time before he can't ignore it anymore, right?
even then, even when it's glaringly obvious, he might still resist. Like, it's not a big deal. I can manage.
Denial. We've all been there.
The Gita is saying we do the same thing with suffering, We might experience it in different ways throughout life, but do we ever really face it head on? We get so caught up in our little victories or achievements, the day-to-day stuff, that we never really stop and acknowledge the big looming thing in the room.
You mean our own vulnerability? The fact that we're all susceptible to suffering, no matter how much we try to avoid it.
Precisely. And that's the first hurdle the Gita highlights. Like, our friend, the old man, before he can even think about finding a solution, he has to acknowledge the problem.
Admit that his eyesight is failing. It seems obvious, but I guess we're not always so great at facing our own weaknesses.
It's human nature, right, to avoid what makes us uncomfortable. But here's the thing. Even if the old man accepts that his vision is going, that doesn't mean he's automatically going to do something about it. You know what I mean?
You're saying he could just resign himself to a life of blurry vision? Figure it's not worth the effort to try and fix it.
Exactly. He could just say, well, I've lived a good life, or it's too late now, or whatever story he tells himself. And, I think we do this all the time in different areas of our lives.
Yeah, I can see that. We might acknowledge suffering exists intellectually, but are we really doing everything we can to free ourselves from it? I'm not so sure.
And that brings us to the second prerequisite, desire. You have to genuinely want the solution, not just kind of wish things were different, but really long for it with your whole heart.
So it's not just about understanding that suffering is a part of life. It's about being so fed up with it, so done with the whole cycle of pain and dissatisfaction, that you're willing to do whatever it takes to break free.
Exactly. It's about moving from this place of passive acceptance to active seeking. The old man doesn't just magically regain his sight, he has to consciously choose to pursue healing.
So we've got acknowledging our vulnerability to suffering, check, and then cultivating this deep desire for liberation, check. Is there anything else we need to add to our soul surgery prep list?
There's one more thing. Remember how we were talking about the old man trying all sorts of crazy remedies to fix his eyesight?
Like splashing cold water on his face at 3 in the morning, hoping for a miracle cure.
Exactly. He tries everything he can think of just to avoid facing the fact that sometimes we can't do it all ourselves.
We see that all the time, right? People chasing quick fixes, temporary solutions, anything to avoid doing the real work.
And this, my friend, is the third prerequisite. Understanding that self-help won't cut it. We might achieve a little bit of relief through external means, but real, lasting liberation, that requires something more.
It's like when you buy one of those really complicated gadgets and spend hours trying to figure it out on your own. Eventually you have to admit defeat and crack open the instruction manual.
Now you're getting it. We approach so many challenges in life with this I can do it myself attitude. We think we can just think our way out of suffering, but the Gita is saying, hey, maybe we need a different kind of instruction manual, a manual for the soul, you could say.
So are you saying we should all go find a guru, a teacher, who can guide us on this journey?
The Gita definitely highlights how important it is to find the right teacher. But, the idea of surrendering to a teacher, that's a whole other conversation. A deep dive for another day,
But
perhaps.
it's more than just like reading a book or something.
It's more than just information, yeah.
It's about finding someone who can actually like guide you, right?
Who can personalize it?
Who's been there, done that.
Exactly.
It can walk you through the process.
It's about recognizing that sometimes, we need more than just information.
We need like a transformation.
Yeah, transformation, exactly. And that often requires a guide, someone who's walked the path themselves.
Who can help you navigate like all the ups and downs.
The twists and turns, absolutely.
Help translate this ancient wisdom into something that actually makes sense for like, our lives.
For your life right now, yeah.
Okay, so we've got to acknowledge we're vulnerable to suffering. We've got to actually want to break free from it. And then we've got to accept that we probably can't do it all on our own.
It's a lot.
I need some help.
It is a lot. And, this whole idea of surrendering to a teacher, it's a big one.
It's huge. There's so much to unpack there.
We could do a whole other deep dive just on that.
Well, I think you've definitely given us a lot to think about today. I know I'm going to be rereading the Gita with a whole new perspective after this conversation.
It makes you think, right?
It really does. And for those of you listening, make sure you join us next time because we are going to be taking a deep dive into that very topic, surrendering to a teacher.